Hey, this is Sam Black with Game 1 of the finals of the Standard 8-player queue with RWBurn. As we see here, I've won the die roll and choose to play first. And I have a pretty strong opening hand with a temple that I can play first into Mutavault Young Pyromancer, and then maybe Eidolon a Great Revel if I draw more red. Otherwise, I have Shock and Skullcrack to make tokens, let me Stoke the Flames. And that's all assuming I just don't draw any cards. So, pretty happy with this. My opponent also keeps 7, and as I said, I lead Temple and put Young Pyromancer to the bottom, as once I have a Young Pyromancer, I think I'd rather just find more burn spells rather than spending time getting a second Young Pyromancer into play. My opponent is playing presumably Mono Blue Devotion and leads Island Judge's Familiar. And I draw a mountain and decide to play Young Pyromancer before Eidolon of the Great Revel, because this will let me play Shock and then Eidolon without exposing myself to Judge's Familiar, whereas the other line, if I played Eidolon, then Young Pyromancer, then Shock, he could potentially Judge's Familiar with the Shock, and I want the Young Pyromancer in play before I play the Shock. Also, getting the Eidolon of the Great Revel in play before I play the Young Pyromancer is going to do more damage to me, which is not necessarily something I'm looking for in this matchup, even if it is likely to get 2 more damage into my opponent from a spell that he plays on his turn. I don't think it's worth the trade-off in total. So my opponent plays a second land and Tidebinders my Young Pyromancer and hits me with Judge's Familiar. I suppose one note on what I was saying last turn, I can only play Shock and Eidolon if I draw red source, whereas if I play Eidolon I can play Young Pyromancer and Shock off Mutavault, which is an argument to go the other way, but I still don't think it outweighs my other considerations. So as it turns out, I draw Sacred Foundry, and I decide to Shock the Tidebinder, which, as I mentioned, I want to do as my first spell so that I have a mana up to pay for Judge's Familiar. That resolves, and then I pay 2 life to Sacred Foundry to play Eidolon of the Great Revel. My opponent hits me for 1 after playing a land and has no follow-up play, which is a pretty good spot for me. So I play Mutavault and just send in the team. Pretty straightforward play here. And my opponent casts Trap at Higher Position on his own Judge's Familiar, doing 2 damage to himself, which will give him a blocker. So I let that resolve, and then I Stoke the Flames the Frog Lizard because I don't want to lose any of my guys. And he actually just straight concedes to the Stoke the Flames. Presumably his hand at this point is pretty bad, and he's taking 5 damage. And I guess he just has no way to deal with this board.